Top 10 Cases of Human Cannibalism. 10. Alfred Packer. Packer was an American gold prospector and convicted cannibal. On February 9, 1874, he left with 5 others for an expedition in the Colorado mountains. 2 months later, Packer returned from the expedition alone. When questioned of the whereabouts of the men that had been with him, Packer said that he killed them in self-defense and was forced to eat their remains in order to survive the elements. His story was not believed and he soon after signed 2 separate confessions. Packer was given a 40-year sentence, at that time the longest communal sentence in United States history. Amazingly, he was granted parole because sufficient doubt remained about his innocence.
9. Albert Fish. Albert Fish was a true-life monster in every sense of the word. He was sadistic, delusional, and worst of all, he received gratification from his repulsive acts. Besides being an admitted serial killer and cannibal, he was also a rampant pedophile and a deviant. Fish kidnapped, murdered, and consumed a 10-year-old girl from Manhattan. 6 years later, Fish taunted the innocent girl's family by sending a letter to them graphically detailing his crime and the pleasure he received committing it. The letter was traced back to him and he was arrested and convicted. Justice would be served on January 16, 1936, as Fish was executed at the Sing Sing Correctional Facility in upstate New York.
8. Revolutionary United Front. RUF was a revolutionary group based in Sierra Leone in Western Africa. By the late 1990s they had been mired in a long bloody campaign to topple the central government. These insurgents terrorized rural Sierra Leone in an effort to control the nation's diamond mines. Aided by factions of the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, these groups committed horrific atrocities which included forcing children to become soldiers, amputations of limbs and cannibalism of enemies, including peacekeepers and United Nations personnel. Their motives for eating their enemies were to receive strength from eating human flesh and as a tool for intimidation. The exact number of victims is unknown.
7. Issei Sagawa. Sagawa was a Japanese student completing an English literature degree in Paris. He met and then shot a co-ed on June 11, 1981. After her death, he proceeded to cannibalize her over the next 2 days. Sagawa was eventually arrested by French authorities but deemed unfit for trial due to insanity and was deported. In one of the worst examples of injustice in legal history, a paperwork error allowed Sagawa to simply check himself out of a mental institution after a little more than a year of confinement. He is now a free man living in Japan.
6. Andrei Chikatilo. Chikatilo was a Ukrainian-born serial killer and rapist. While in custody, Chikatilo confessed to over 50 murders and mutilations. He befriended, killed, and ate his victims. He admitted that his motives were solely for sexual gratification. The details of Chikatilo's life and crimes are the stuff that nightmares are made of. This madman only halted his killing spree when he was finally arrested and identified after one of the largest operations in Russian police history. Chikatilo was executed in Rostov on February 14, 1994. D4.
5. Morova family. The Morovas are a family of cult members and cannibals from the Czech Republic. Over an 8-month period, relatives and fellow cult members participated in despicable acts against 2 brothers. The actual details of what a mother allowed to be done to her young children are extremely disturbing. By a remarkable chain of events, the truth about the Morova family was discovered on May 10, 2007 when horrific images on a baby monitor, which they had installed in their house to view the crimes, were picked up by a neighbor who had the exact same monitor. A total of 6 people were eventually convicted. 4. Armin Mize. By most accounts, Mize was a depraved and pathetic individual from Rotenburg, Germany. In 2001 he posted an advertisement on an internet site which read in part, looking for a well-built 18 to 30-year-old to be slaughtered and then consumed. Unbelievably, Mize received a serious response from a willing participant. The 2 men met on Christmas Day and proceeded to commit and videotape some of the most unimaginable acts on earth. Miles was arrested after revealing details of his crime. He is currently serving a life sentence in a German prison.
3. Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer was an American serial killer, necrophiliac, and cannibal from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Dahmer, an extremely disturbed individual, would lure young men to his apartment where he would murder and dismember them after sedating them with alcohol or drugs. After disposing of his victims, he would consume or experiment with their remains. By the time of his trial, he was charged and convicted of 15 murders and given numerous life sentences. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Milwaukee.
2. Carib West Indian tribes. The first known modern accounts of cannibalism were reported following Columbus' expedition to the West Indies. At this point, cannibalism was considered atrocious and sacrilegious in the developed world. Imagine, if you will, the indescribable horror that the first Europeans felt when they witnessed Carib natives during a post-war ritual chewing and/or eating human flesh. This misunderstanding of Caribbean culture led to the people of the Americas being considered savages. These sentiments lead to policies which encouraged countless incidents of slavery, mass murder, exploitation and destruction of the native culture of the Americas that continued for centuries.
1. Stella Maris college rugby team Uruguay. On October 13, 1972, the team was on its way from Montevideo, Uruguay to play a match in Santiago, Chile. Fierce wind and snow hounded the flight as the plane trekked through the Andes Mountains. Due to poor weather and pilot error, the plane crashed atop of an unnamed mountain on the border of Chile and Argentina. Search parties from 3 countries searched for 11 days in vain to find the downed flight of 45 people but were unsuccessful, and all passengers were presumed dead. What followed next is one of the greatest examples of human survival ever recorded. Despite no food or heat, 16 members of the team stayed on top of the mountain for over 2 months through the brutal winter while being forced to eat the remains of their fallen teammates before finally being rescued.